Okay, let's look at why we would like to load external content into our Adobe Animate Movies projects, and how to get our project started, and file organization. So let's look at some of that. And for now, let's look at Mr. Sherman's project, Rocky and Bullwinkle. A lot of this stuff was loaded externally, like the sound, this player, the About page, the Contact page, and the video. These were all loaded. The walk cycle is actually internal. Let's take a look at that. So you have a lot of stuff going on in here. So let's take a look at this, our contact file. So this is our contact file. He built this in a separate FLA file. So this is a separate FLA file that's not a part of our master file. So this is why we want to load Swift files from outside of our master. And one of the main reasons I would say is because if you look at his buttons, you got a lot of layers, you got a lot of frames, and you might even have, quite a bit of code, and he's got quite a bit of code in here. And so if you start doing that and you start mixing all these other pieces and parts with it, it can get kind of confusing. And so that's just going to put a lot of different frames, and then you might have to put like your video frames way over here after maybe your contact, and it can just get real messy. So loading it externally can be a lot easier and just clean up everything a lot better. And for anybody that might also need to work on this file, when they open it up, they can understand a little bit easier what's going on, rather than being a real cluttered mess. And for this project here, I mean, you can kind of look at the code. So this is basically on the main file, or the main ActionScript layer. This is the main code, and there's not too much. We got our sound player here, video player here. This is where we loaded our slideshow. And here's our buttons. So when we click the buttons, this is what tells us to toggle those buttons. So that's the most of the code. We also have some code for the bomb, and the bomb is within. And right here you can see the bomb, and this is some of the animation here, and the bomb. He's got some animation for the flame and the explosion. And then he also has that action script right here, which is what we were just looking at. And how you would get in, and as you can see that, it's not on our main timeline here. We actually have to go, we'll actually click on to the button, which is really just an action script file. And then we double click on there, and that's what brings us into that. So we have an animation within our main file. And once again, that keeps everything all cleaned up and nice and simple and easy to understand. So that's one of the main reasons we want to get started in loading external content. So, like I said, this was a separate file, and we'll eventually, once you get done or at a time where you want to test it, control test, and then that will give us our SWF file, and then that SWF file will show up into our folder. And to talk a little bit about file organization, when you name your file, put your name, and then the name of the project, and then final, something similar to that, name, and then project. And we just created that SWF file, and it's showing up in here. And here's an about Swift file, this was the button contact we just created. It also has our photos, our slideshow, and we also have a sound player. And you notice we didn't have to put a background on this one because it just shows up with the background underneath. It's actually a transparent layer. And then our video, we just imported the video into this video FLA down here. And you'll notice also that all of our SWFs will need to be all in that same folder as our master. So once again, this is our master. This is where we're going to start, and this is where everything will end up going. And once again, we'll do a control test. And so all those SWFs come up and show up in our project. And we do that with the ActionScript. So if we go in and look at our ActionScript, here is that SWF. So we'll have to put the name of that file exactly named with the file extension and everything. That'll go in our code here. This is where our video is showing up at. And our button, or this is our slideshow. And these are the buttons that help toggle in between the contact, about, and the photo section. And that's mostly how you put it together. Now, how you might want to get started with that, we were looking at his contact file, and we are going to have to give it coordinates of where to find it and the size. So I created this I called this down here in a layer and called it a placeholder. And I just created these symbols, and that way I can go into properties and I can see where it will go and the size. So now that I have this built, I know I want my size to be close to about this. Because I'm trying to fit it in a place, I might make it a little bit less than this. I might maybe like 370 by 316. And another important thing is we want to make sure we're doing ActionScript files. So when you start it, you're going to want to do a file, new, and we want to do not HTML, we want ActionScript, and then we put the size we were just looking at, which was 378. So 378 by the height is 316, and maybe make it 315, maybe even a little less, depending on how you want to do it. And we can actually make the stage a little bit bigger, but we do want all of our file to fit within this area. If we go and look at the finished, this is how he has it laid out. And then once again, like I said, you'll create that FLA file, and then the code will bring that FLA in here, and then you can move all the placeholders out of the range. But this is basically just to get a good size to create your file, and where and how to put your X and Y coordinates if you need it. So let's go back. I do believe our photos is in this area too. So if we look at the position on our X and Y, it's 57 and 175. Let's go back and look at our code. So 57 and 175. And this is our button photo. And it's close, 50, 175, so 40 and 160. That's an estimate, so then you can always play around with these numbers to get it more closer to where you want it to go. And so that's it on this lesson. This is just basically a good start of how to get your project started and how it's all going to come together and how it's all going to end up.